Hey, we're going to talk about Chapter 9 tonight, and we've had a change of venue. Obviously, I'm not in my office anymore. I'm in the converted garage at my house. This is not a man cave, this is a junk cave. And in Chapter 9, someone has wisely once said that it's almost impossible to overestimate the importance of contracts in the field of business. What contracts can give you in business is certainty. You know what certain materials cost, so you know how to correctly price your product. It's extremely important. No matter what business you're in, let's say you're in the food service business at the university that I teach at, well, you're going to have a copy machine that's going to need a contract to be fixed. You're going to need a contract with the university. You're going to need a contract with the executive chef. You're going to need a contract to get the van repaired that the food service company uses, and so on and so on. A contract is, in fact, a set of promises that a court will enforce. Now, there are four required elements of a contract. First is agreement, which comprises both offer and acceptance. Second is consideration, what each party brings to the contract. If I'm selling you my old Volkswagen for $1,400, you bring the $1,400 and I bring the Volkswagen. The third thing is contractual capacity. You have to have the capacity legally to enter into a contract, be of the right age and mental condition, and the contract must be for something legal. All right, there are various types of contracts. One is a contract can be either bilateral or unilateral. In a bilateral contract, you have one promise given in return for another promise. Let's say I promise to cut your lawn and you promise to pay me $35. We each have a promise. In a unilateral contract, it might state, if you paint my house, I promise to pay you $1,500. You're not required to paint my house, but if you do, I am required to pay you the $1,500. We can have either an express contract or an implied in fact contract. An express contract is one that is either written or verbal. Either one can be express. An implied in fact contract is one where your actions imply that you are going to do something. If I bring the whole class down here to New Orleans and we go to a great restaurant and there are 26 of us in the room and we have a great time and I ask for the bill and the waiter gives me the bill and I say, I'm not going to pay for this, they're going to eventually call the police and I'm going to get arrested and I'm going to owe the money for the meal because my actions implied that I was going to pay for the meal, an implied in fact contract. There are executed and executory contracts. An executed contract is one that's been fully performed by all parties. You've given me the $1,400. I've given you title to the old Volkswagen. That's executed. An executory contract is one that hasn't been completely fulfilled. I contract with you to cut my grass. You're half the way through cutting the grass. Well, it hasn't been fulfilled by both parties, so it's executory. Contracts in some states of some kind can be either void, V-O-I-D, or voidable. For example, in some states, a minor's contracts, someone who was 15, 16, 17 years old, are completely void, as if they never existed. In other states, they are voidable. The parent or guardian of the minor can either accept the contract or reject the contract. Another interesting concept is one of quasi, Q-U-A-S-I, quasi-contract. A quasi-contract is simply a contract that's completely made up by the courts in order to bring justice. For example, I borrow $100 from you. You live in the dormitory. I'm going to pay you back. I know that you live in dorm room 202. but instead I accidentally put it under the door of room 302. Well, Joe lives in 302. He gets $100 cash in an envelope, and he brags around campus that somebody left him $100. I realize what has happened, and even though there is no contract at all, no written contract, no verbal contract, the court, just in order to do justice, will say that Joe has a quasi contract and is required to give the $100 to you. Contracts start with an offer. An offer has three elements. First, the offeror must have a serious intent to be bound. If you come into a room full of folks and you're trying to use your cell phone and you realize, oh, the charger's not working again on it, and you just slam the phone on the table and you say, this piece of junk, I'd sell it to anybody for $1, and the man at the table next to you says, here's $1, it's mine. No, because your offer really wasn't a serious intent to be bound. Next, the terms of the contract must be reasonably definite or certain. There's a very interesting, fun video about the Sopranos TV show on this online. Third, the offer must be communicated by the offeror to the offeree. That is, that you must actually tell the offeree about the offer. There are various ways to terminate an offer for a contract. You can revoke the offer. I offer to sell you my Volkswagen for $1,400, and you say you're going to think about it for a few days. I call you the next day before you've answered and say, I revoke my offer. Fine, that's revocation by the offeror. Next, the offer could be rejected by the offeree. After a couple of days, you may call me and say, I reject your offer. I don't want your old Volkswagen. Or you may say, I'll pay you $900 for your Volkswagen, in which case that's a counter offer, and the offeror becomes the offeree and vice versa. You can also terminate by operation of law. Enough time is going to terminate an offer. Destruction of the object will terminate an offer. Death or incompetence of one of the parties is going to terminate an offer. Now, acceptance must be unequivocal. It must mirror in every way the original offer. Let's talk about consideration. Consideration is what each party brings to the table. My old Volkswagen, your $1,400. So, consideration under law, these laws go way, way back to oldie English days. Consideration is adequate. This sounds very strange. You have adequate consideration even if what's offered and by the offeror and the offeree is very differently valued. If I offer you my brand new minivan and you agree to pay $10 for it, that would be adequate consideration on both sides because both parties are bringing something of value. Now, I'm not saying, don't hear what I'm not saying, I'm not saying that that offer is going to be upheld by the courts. They might find it to be unenforceable due to fraud, duress, undue influence, insanity, sham transaction, etc. Consideration cannot be a pre-existing obligation or duty. If you pull up to a parking place in your downtown and an on-duty policeman comes to you and says, sir, if you sign this contract, I'll make sure that nobody hurts your vehicle. Well, no, he can't sign that contract because his consideration is something that he has a pre-existing duty to provide. Consideration can't be for past actions. If I'm at the zoo and you and one of the lions escapes and is about to eat me and you heroically come and you grab the lion and you rip his jaws apart and you save my life and I say thank you so much, you know, I really don't have any money at all, but if one day I get money, I'm gonna give you $1 million for saving me from the lion. and I go off from the zoo and I buy a Powerball ticket, and the next day it's in all the newspapers that I've got the $178 million cash prize. You see the article, you bring the contract we signed, and you say, I want my $1 million. Well, no, you can't have the $1 million because the consideration that you gave was for something you already did, a past action, and consideration can't be for past actions. Finally, promissory estoppel. If someone makes you a promise and you rely on that promise and it's to your ultimate detriment and you can't get back to where you were before, then the courts will, under the concept of promissory estoppel, require the person that made you that promise to actually enforce, to actually fulfill that promise. Okay, that's it for this chapter.